As a society, we are becoming more and more like individuals with right hemisphere deficits. Evidence suggests that between a quarter and a third of children aged as old as 5 to 7 are now having to be taught how to read the human face in a way that was only necessary so far for autistic children. And about a third of all children now have difficulty carrying out tasks that a decade ago every child in mainstream school would have been able to do easily, especially tasks that depend on sustained attention. There's also research that suggests that children and people in general today are less empathic than people 40 or 50 years ago. This is important because if a neuropsychologist had to choose 3 things to characterize most clearly the contribution of the right hemisphere of our brain, they would most probably be the capacity to read the human face, the capacity to sustain vigilant attention, and the capacity to empathize. So, if the left brain hemisphere vision is less insightful than the right hemisphere, why is it that it has come to dominate the way we think today? We're going to look at 6 reasons why this particular entrenchment occurs. First, the left hemisphere view is designed to help us in grabbing stuff. Its purpose is utility, and so it helps us to amass things. Therefore, it's a very seductive proposal. Second, the left hemisphere view offers very easy, very simple answers to reality. Its mode of thinking prizes consistency above all, and claims to offer the same mechanistic model to explain everything that exists. This thinking is common to those who espouse naive reductionist science, which is called scientism. Reason number 3. The left hemisphere's worldview is much easier to articulate. The left hemisphere is the speaking hemisphere, while the right hemisphere doesn't have language. Language is grounded in the left hemisphere. The left hemisphere relies on concatenations of serial propositions and the literal aspects of language. Let's think about the literal interpretation of the scriptures, for example, to make meaning explicit. So, left brain hemisphere explicit. By contrast, metaphor and narrative are often required to convey the implicit meanings available to the right hemisphere. And in a left hemisphere dominated culture, metaphors and narratives are disregarded as myths and fables, or even at worst, downright lies. Number 4. Since the Industrial Revolution, we have created a world around us that actually reflects the world of the left brain, the world view of the left hemisphere. It seems like today all the available sources of intuitive life that are the natural world, cultural tradition, religion, art, and the body have been so conceptualized, devitalized, and deconstructed by self-consciousness and explicitness that their power to help us see intuitively beyond the world that the left hemisphere has set up has been largely drained from them. Number 5. The hemispheres have a different take on everything, including on their own relationship. The right hemisphere tends to ground experience. The left hemisphere then works on it to clarify, unpack, and generally render the implicit explicit. And the right hemisphere finally reintegrates what the left hemisphere has produced with its own understanding, the explicit once more receding, to produce a new enriched whole. In this relationship, it's important to note that the left hemisphere is unaware of what is missing, and therefore it thinks it can go alone without the right hemisphere, while the right hemisphere view is much more integrated and holistic. Number 6, a culture that already has some prominent autistic characteristics in itself attracts to positions of influence individuals who will help it even further down the same path. I can think of a perfect example in Elon Musk or many others. All this helps us understand why a metaphor today in our society is seen as something cute and fictional rather than, in fact, the only way, the only path to truth. The right hemisphere construes the world as inherently giving rise to what the left hemisphere calls paradox and ambiguity. This is much like the problem of the analytic versus holistic understanding of what a metaphor is. To one hemisphere, a perhaps beautiful but ultimately irrelevant lie. To the other, it's the only path to truth.